Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Sillage and Sorcery, a podcast about perfume from the vantage of two witches who infuse their craft with the art of perfumery. I'm one of your hosts, B. Sampson from Venus Invictus, and I'm here with my other lovely host,
Melissa Sifjardóttir of Sif Sniffs.
If you'd like to support us, the best way to do so is buying from our brands, both of which are linked in the show notes. So let's get into it. Today, we are diving into the world of designer molecules. These are the unsung heroes of modern perfumery. These synthetic compounds have revolutionized the fragrance industry, allowing perfumers to create scents that are innovative, versatile, and often impossible to achieve with natural ingredients alone. In this episode, we'll explore two of the most iconic designer molecules, ISOE Super and Cetalox. We're going to uncover their chemistry, how they've shaped the way we experience fragrance, plus we'll give a nod to a few other groundbreaking perfume molecules that have transformed the perfume landscape. So I think the best place to start is, what the fuck is a designer molecule? So, unlike natural ingredients like rose or sandalwood, designer molecules are synthetic compounds created in the lab. They're designed to mimic natural scents, enhance existing ones, or even create entirely new olfactory experiences. These molecules are the building blocks of modern perfumery, offering consistency, sustainability, and endless creative possibility. While they may not have the romantic backstory of natural ingredients like ambergris, their impact on the fragrance world is undeniable. So first things first, let's talk about ISOE Super, the invisible star. I put it in almost everything. If it's not ISOE Super, it's the other one, which is very similar, that was developed, I believe, a little bit later, which is Timber Silk. It just has like a little woody nuance to it. It's often called the invisible fragrance. Question for you, have you ever worn a scent with ISOE Super, and did you notice its effect?
I've known it more in like DS and Durga's, I don't know what, all of the ones that are not designed to be a perfume itself, but more to enhance other perfume.
So, ISOE Super is arguably one of the most famous designer molecules in perfumery. It was developed in the 70s by the chemical company IFF. ISOE Super is a synthetic molecule with a warm, woody, slightly ambery scent. But here's the twist. It's often described as an invisible scent. And why is that? Because it's subtle and almost elusive. Some can barely smell it, others don't smell it at all. And then others, like me, find it very intoxicating. This unique quality is what makes ISOE Super a versatile tool for perfumers. It's not just a note, but it's also an enhancer that adds depth and texture to fragrance. Its breakthrough came with the creation of Molecule 1. Molecule 1 is from perfumer Geza Schoen. It's a minimalist fragrance composed almost entirely of ISOE Super. It became a cult classic, proving that sometimes less is more. Today, you'll find ISOE Super in countless fragrances, from niche perfumes to mainstream hits. It's the quiet star of the modern perfume industry, working behind the scenes to make other notes shine. I am obsessed with it. I put it in almost everything.
Would you say it's a no makeup kind of a note?
Yes! No makeup, perfume ingredient.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge for 10 minutes from now?
There's really not much to it other than that it is like a very cool ingredient made in the 70s. Amazing. It's a superstar on its own. And next up, I'm going to cover a little bit about Cetalox. So I like to call Cetalox the ethereal musk. Cetalox is a molecule that's about elegance and sophistication. It's a synthetic version of ambergris. We talked a little bit about it in our ambergris episode. Our main focus on that one was ambroxan. If you haven't heard it, go back and check out the episode. It's available on all platforms. Cetalox is consistent, it's sustainable, and it's cruelty-free. It has a clean, musky, slightly marine scent that's both sensual and ethereal. Think of it kind of like as if the ocean is whispering to you. That's how it makes me feel, at least. It adds like a velvety warmth, I think, to like
That I
perfumes.
will say, absolutely velvety warmth. But also, I broke a bottle of Juliet Has a Gun, Not a Perfume, in my office back when I was a therapist. So now it makes me think of sweaty teenagers.
Love that. Love that.
This consent's tied to memory.
Yeah, exactly. It
Why does it
is.
smell like this really expensive perfume in here, Miss Melissa?
Well, at least it smelled good. So, Cedarlox is often used as a base note, providing a subtle yet long lasting foundation that kind of ties everything together. You find Cedarlox in fragrances like Eccentric Molecules, Molecule Number Two, where it takes the center stage, as well as in many other contemporary perfumes that aim for a clean, futuristic vibe. Cedalox is a fantastic example about how synthetic molecules can replicate rare natural materials while being more ethical and sustainable. It's also a testament to the power of exclusivity deals, unfortunately. I hate them. I hate exclusivity deals. They make the perfume industry thrive, but at the same time, I'm as like a smaller perfumer, I'm like, God damn it. There are a handful of ingredients. I can't wait until they become mainstream, but for now, we just can't, we don't have access to them. So, for those of you that don't know, major fragrance houses like Firmenich or Givaudan often create custom molecules for luxury brands, giving them a unique edge in the market. For example, Firmenich developed a proprietary version of Cedalux exclusively for high end perfumes, ensuring that only select brands could access it. If you had to describe Cedalox as like a mood or a vibe, what do you think it would be?
Ooh, I'm going to use Inside Out because, once again, therapists. Ennui. I think the ennui character
Mm,
is the perfect description
okay,
for Settleox.
love that. I think if I could describe it as a mood, I would say like being in public, having like a weighted blanket on you.
I think, too, when it comes to these designer molecules, we put a lot of work into all of our scents, and a lot of that work is our intellectual property, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to these bigger houses, as we both know, there's tons of dupe companies out there. They exist
Mm,
everywhere, and anytime any perfume gets crazy popular, people are trying to recreate it. I do think designer molecules give these higher end brands advantage over, yes, smaller perfumers like you and me, but also it gives them the ability to create something that at the very least can't be duped as easily. So when you're talking about intellectual property and dupes, I do think designer molecules not only lead to innovation, which is a big thing that we love, but also it gives these designer brands a chance to keep their property a little bit longer before, not naming any particular brand names because I don't want to get sued, come and take it.
yeah, that's a fantastic point to make. So, while ISO Super and then Cedalox are stars in their own right, they're just two examples of how designer molecules have transformed perfumery. I'm going to take a moment to acknowledge a few other designer molecules that have left their mark on the fragrance world. Ambroxan. We've talked about it. It's a synthetic alternative to ambergris. It has a warm amber-like scent with salty skin-like quality. It's a key ingredient in fragrances like Dior Sauvage, and it's become a staple in modern perfumery. Hedione is incredible. I'm obsessed with it. It was discovered in the 60s. It's a synthetic version of jasmine that has a fresh, airy, and slightly citrusy quality to it. While it wasn't originally part of Chanel, the 1921 formula, it was later incorporated into the fragrance, helping modernize its iconic floral bouquet. It's since become a go-to for perfumers looking to add like a sparkling floral lift to their creation. I personally think that Hedione kind of smells like transparent jasmine. It's like if you take a jasmine flower and you make it see-through. That's what it smells like to me. Cashmere is another one. It's a velvety, woody, slightly spicy scent. It often is used to create a sense of warmth and depth. It's a favorite in amber and woody scents, adding a luxurious texture and feel. So these molecules, along with ISO super and Cetalogs, have expanded the perfumer's palette, enabling the creation of scents that are both innovative and timeless, but there's something fascinating. Many of these are exclusive at some point or another to specific brands, like Givaudan's Javanol, which is a sandalwood alternative. It was first made available to high-end brands like Tom Ford and, callback, Francis Kirkjian. I have a question for you. Do you think the average perfume wearer realizes how much of like their favorite perfumes have are built on like synthetic molecules?
Absolutely not. At least the people that I'm interacting with at fairs, I think they have zero idea. I also think that now, especially larger brands, there's this push for being clean. There's no definition of clean. So is a designer chemical clean? And I think some people would say, absolutely. I'm not killing a whale. I'm not getting poop from a civet cat. That is clean. And then other people are like, but it's still chemical. There's no good answer.
What's crazy is that some of these chemicals are originally tested on like rats and mice just to see like safety when it comes to these ingredients, which still sucks, but it's just the world we live in. I would agree though. I think that a lot of times people come up to my table when I'm vending and they have no clue about what an aroma chemical is or a synthetic material. They're just so familiar with like essential oils. Yeah. A lot of times I kind of have to explain that like we don't harm animals anymore. In a lot of ways it's a lot better.
There's a lot of essential oils that
Mm.
aren't necessarily good for you. Just because it comes from nature, stuff happens.
Yeah.
And it can make it toxic.
Right.
Okay? That doesn't necessarily mean just because it grew out of the ground, it's somehow safe.
True. Essential oils are crazy. So, why have designer molecules become so important in perfumery? For starters, they offer consistency. Natural ingredients can vary in quality and availability a lot of the times, and also they vary depending on where they are grown. So, synthetic materials, designer molecules, they add sustainability, reliability, and they're reproducible, reducing the need for harvesting rare or endangered materials. And perhaps most importantly, they allow perfumers to push boundaries and create scents that are entirely new and unexpected. I know for me, once I started using aroma chemicals and not just essential oils and like absolutes and tinctures, my perfume like skills expanded times 1,000 because you have these new smells that are not found in nature. It's not all roses or synthetic jasmine for that matter. The fragrance industry's reliance on exclusivity deals means that smaller perfumers like us can't often access these cutting edge molecules. It makes me so mad. This creates a divide between big luxury perfume and small niche perfumers. I have a question. If you could time travel to the future of perfumery, what kind of wild futuristic molecules do you think that we'll be using? I think that we're going to have like metal smells and like mineral smells.
I also think we'll have more olfactory, accurate green ones. Everybody wants a grass. When it's cut on our lawn in the summer, like that smell, that would be a big one, like the scent of the forest. But I do think like that would be where future for designer molecules are going to go, is like being able to create more accurate,
like picture perfect,
to what we actually experience in real life.
I would agree to that because they've already come so far at this point. There are certain things that happen to materials over time, like the smell of old book pages. That's another one that I think that we're on the verge of figuring out. I can't wait for it. Everyone loves the smell of an old book. I do. So that's the story of designer molecules from my perspective, from their humble beginnings in the lab to their starring roles in some of the world's most beloved fragrances. ISOE Super and Cetalogs and their synthetic siblings have transformed the way we think about scent, proving that science and art can come together to create something truly magical. They're formed in a lab, but just change lab with cauldron. There's like a form of alchemy and magic to it.
Absolutely. That's why we make this podcast. Y'all think
Yeah.
perfumery is just chemistry? No, absolutely not.
Nope. With that being said, I'm going to hand it over to my co-host, who is going to do a deep dive into a fragrance from the pop culture
I'm
zeitgeist.
putting on this lip balm on purpose. We should put the lip balm on first before we start talking, because it's hard to do both.
So I have birthdaybomb.com from Glossier.
I have Glossier's berrybomb.com, because today we are talking about the #1 selling perfume in Sephora for the year 2024. Glossier You. Did you think that would have been the top seller for 2024 in Sephora?
Not in Sephora. I think I would have thought that that was the most popular perfume in 2024, though, for sure.
What we're going to talk about how Glossier You came to be, but also the enigmatic figure of Emily Weiss. Emily Weiss was born March 22nd, 1985, so her birthday's pretty close to yours.
Yeah, so I think she's a Pisces?
So I usually don't make a chart for people because she's right around the equinox. Not only is she an Aries,
She's an Aries, yeah.
but she's a stellium in Aries. She's Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Venus in Aries.
What year was she born?
85.
Okay, that's wild.
Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Venus. So that's a lot. She's born in Wilton, Connecticut, which is 2 towns over from me.
No way!
Yeah, as a person who lives around here, Wilton is a very bougie town, but it's not as bougie as, say, Greenwich or Darien. Greenwich and Darien are the big, high-class, expensive places. Westport's also pretty bad. I say bad, I could afford to live in any of these 3 places. She is a theater kid, which in my notes, I put in parentheses, represent. In high school, she took a babysitting job. And it seems that she purposely took the babysitting job because she knew that her neighbor worked for Ralph Lauren and she wanted to intern for Ralph Lauren, but they didn't hire people in high school for interns. So she took the babysitting job to get buddy-buddy with her neighbor to get an internship at Ralph Lauren.
Did she eventually get it?
Not only did she get it, but a high school intern. She was actually asked for input from Ralph Lauren during a meeting.
Shut up.
And I should note, for those who are not in Connecticut, Wilton, as well as where I live, have a train station that will get you to Grand Central in a little bit over an hour. So getting an internship in the city is absolutely doable when you're in high school. We have pretty easy access to Midtown.
That's wild.
When she's in college, she goes to NYU. And she uses her connections at Ralph Lauren to get an internship at Teen Vogue, which is a new publication, almost immediately because she's tall and beautiful. According to reports from the people who work there, because she is tall and beautiful, they use her as a model, as a cool girl around town.
Stop.
One of her first articles is about thrifting for deals when you're a college student, which I think is crazy to me as a person who lives where I live. Because if you go thrifting here, you get all of the rejects from people who live in multi-million-dollar houses.
But Florida, honey.
Okay, some rural place, right? It's a little different.
True.
Because we have so many rich people. That alone kind of pissed me off because it was fake news.
That's so right. The irony of yeah, I was just an intern at Ralph Lauren when I was in high school.
I'm going to write about thrifting in Fairfield County, Connecticut. At this time, since Teen Vogue is so new, it had an agreement with the Hills so that the stars could be working there. Do you remember the Hills?
I do remember the Hills.
Heidi,
What
Spencer.
I didn't. Spidey. Yeah.
So I did not watch it.
Yeah, Lauren Conrad.
Lauren Conrad interns for Teen Vogue in their LA office, but it's well known that it's not really an office. It's just a closet that they're recording the show in, and that they're just saying that they have the internship for the publicity. But they do bring Emily for a 3-episode arc as this serious intern from the New York office. Emily herself does not like talking about it. Tries to avoid it in interviews because it was about 24 hours of filming that they made into this big 3-episode arc. After college, she becomes a fashion assistant for W Magazine. She also writes articles.
Wow, that's wild. W Magazine, I fucking love W.
She writes articles and little blurbs, mostly about outfits where you combine expensive items with more attainable items. So it's here is this $1,800 jacket, and look, we can pair it with some $5 costume jewelry. That's mainly what she focuses on for the articles that she writes. One of her big articles, the one that like gives her the idea for Into the Gloss, which we'll talk about later, is a drugstore self-tanner. So she's talking to a model for an interview, and the model works for the self-tanning company. She goes out and buys it, and then writes this article about this self-tanner. She takes and uses it to launch Into the Gloss, which is a blog about specifically beauty routines and beauty items. She wanted to transfer from fashion more towards beauty.
She launched Into the Gloss, and then within 6 months, she was getting like 6 million views a day.
Yeah. So that's part of the fun with Into the Gloss. She has this really relaxed take with very influential people kind of all over the place. The biggest draw for Into the Gloss is what's called Top Shelf. For Top Shelf, Emily would photograph people in their bathrooms doing their beauty routines. Just as she was in the past, she combined the high end with the more standard everyday products. It gives big celebs, they're just like us energy, because it's both accessible and aspirational, right? One of the things that Weiss acknowledges, a $4,000 Dior dress is not accessible for most people, but a $25 Dior mascara is. Now, do you notice that with fragrance as well? Like, nobody owns Chanel, but you might have a bottle of Chanel No. 5 at home.
Yes, 100%. There's so much perfume out there that's like way too expensive for the average working class person. And still, some of these like zeitgeist fragrances are still in people's homes.
Yep.
They give people that like access to luxury.
2021, The Gloss has around 200,000 new users per month. And Top Shelf is iconic for creating the shelfie. So if you've ever heard of a shelfie, that's from Into the Gloss, and specifically the Top Shelf articles.
Those are like the like photos of like what's on your shelf, right?
The very aesthetic photos of all of the products that you are using. So on Into the Gloss, people are talking about the products that they use and giving real-time feedback on what they like in skincare and beauty products. Weiss has this idea to take that input and make it into a brand, which is where Glossier comes from.
That's actually really smart.
Glossier came from the combination of Gloss from Into the Gloss and Dossier, because she wanted it to be like a secret for exclusive people. What she says is that the beauty industry was not listening to their own consumers, that they were instead listening to retailers like Sephora and Ulta and designing their products to look good in stores and what the stores were providing them for their like shelf space.
Which is a part of it.
It inspires Weiss to create Glossier as a direct-to-consumer brand. Although I will say that at the time, there's a lot of startups that are direct-to-consumer that are making fuck tons of money. Some of the other ones are like Away, Tushy, Dollar Shave Club, tons of these brands that just directly ship you out products and you buy from the brand directly. So
Right.
while she says it as like, oh, I wanted to listen to the customers who are buying the actual products instead of using the middleman of Ulta and Sephora, there's also this aspect of a lot of these brands are popping up at this time. So was it just Emily, or were we kind of seeing what the market was?
Fast forward to 2024.
Because Glossier is not publicly traded, we don't know all of the information in terms of like how much money was raised, how much they're actually pulling in for sales. And it's still to this day, we don't know everything. We do have some valuations from venture capital firms. This is able to get $250,000 in angel investments based off of what she already has from Into the Gloss. So she's got friends in high places.
Where are the angel investors? Where are you at?
Please sponsor me.
Hello. I'm speaking. We're the angel investors.
I would like them.
Sponsor us.
Please. The $250K is not enough to start a brand as a brand owner, and I think you as a brand owner could have your brain little
Dollars in a paperclip and I'll start a brand.
right? And apparently you need $1 million to start a brand. Do you? I needed $5,000 in a cult.
It's wild.
She meets with literally dozens of venture capital firms and gets turned down for all of them. Kristen Green is her first venture capital investor, and her firm specializes in direct-to-consumer brands. Some of the other brands that Kristen Green invested in are Dollar Shave Club and also Warby Parker. Price at the time says that she wants skincare as makeup. And she wants to combine those two so that the lines are a little bit more blurry. Their first launch is in 2014 with 4 products.
What were the products?
A face mist, a priming moisturizer, the perfecting skin tint, and the Balm.com. At the time, Balm.com specifically comes after a lot of shit for being just Vaseline in a tube for $14.
No.
Yeah. I mean, there's flavoring and coloring.
That's just repackaged Vaseline.
I think it has changed, but when it first launched, it was absolutely just repackaged Vaseline. It focuses on no makeup makeup. That's why I mentioned when you were talking about designer molecules, the idea of no makeup makeup in perfume form. One of the first 3 products is the perfecting skin tint. How many shades of a foundation, because the perfecting skin tint is a foundation, how many shades of this foundation do you think they released?
5.
3.
No, that's even worse.
3 shades. And for someone around my skin tone, which for those of you who are listening, I'm Irish and Italian, leaning heavily on my Irish. I would be the middle shade. Now, Emily and like the press at the time, this is a perfecting skin tint. It's not supposed to be like a super foundation. It is supposed to be mostly see-through. Your real skin is supposed to show through the skin tint. So you don't need as big a shade range if you're not going to be as full coverage. But you still need more than 3. On Into the Glass, the introduction to Glossier from Weiss is Glossier begins with capital IOU, which is why our products are all about letting your personality shine through. One of the sources I read described it as clean-faced young people who looked fresh and positive and perfectly imperfect. But once again, since we are pointing out this kind of marketing that Glossier does, is you can be plus size but not have acne. Show your freckles but no scars. There is this kind of aesthetic that Glossier puts out immediately, which is these are acceptable imperfections.
It's just a marketing gimmick,
Correct.
in my opinion. Yeah.
As we discussed before, the shade range is absolutely abysmal. So it was almost a year for 2 additional shades. So then you're up to 5. And in 2019, they expanded to 12 shades.
No, like, I feel like 25 to 30 minimum.
You launched in 2014, and 5 years later, now all of a sudden you have 12. With their Instagram marketing and their base, they are trying to create a culture around Glossier. So it's the pale pink, millennial pink, everywhere, with the red writing. So you may also know the zip pouches that have Glossier written on them. At one point, Timothée Chalamet was sporting a Glossier hoodie.
Oh my God.
Because their merch is just as Instagram iconic as their actual product. They are getting more and more VC funding, and they're growing, honestly, exponentially at first. They're hiring more staff, but they're focusing more on the website, the social media, and the product development side, but not on things like HR.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. One report from a former employee said that she showed up on her first day and had to wait around the lobby until another employee just decided to show them what to do.
That's crazy.
I also feel like that startup culture in the late 2000s early 2010s. Like, that's very much startup culture of like, right? Because it's also WeWork times. I do feel like New York, especially in the early 20s, was this we're having a ton of money kind of a place. Employees also were paid below market standard. And the idea was like, well, you're working for a growing company, so we don't have to pay you as much. And you get access to all of these things. And don't you want to work for Glossier?
And also, we don't know how much the company's making, so.
Emily went from W to owning into the Gloss, which morphed into Glossier. And many of her employees, this is their first, like, quote unquote, real job. And for Emily, this is also her second real job. So that's something to also kind of keep in mind, that if we're looking at 2015, that's when she turned 30. So you were in your late 20s running a multi-million-dollar company.
I can't imagine.
There was crazy high turnover, which is kind of par for the course if you don't have HR.
And you're not paying your employees market rate.
An employee stated that she was being yelled at in a meeting by her boss, and her boss's face was on the billboard that faced the office. Because once again, we're using employees, right? So if you work for Glossier, part of the reason they're not paying you is so that you could be an influencer.
Exposure, yeah.
And she's getting yelled at by the person who's on the billboard. We don't know 100% the details, but according to what was filed for getting venture capital funding, Glossier grows about 600% in 2016.
Holy shit.
They also get $1 billion evaluation 5 years after their launch. They're planning pop-ups. These pop-ups have exclusive merch because we know that Glossier is not just makeup, it's a lifestyle. In 2017, they launched Glossier U. The goal of You was to create a perfume that didn't have any top notes, but only consisted of base notes. That way, it's a scent that smells mostly like you. Would you say you agree with that?
I mean, kinda. I don't know. It's just too basic for me.
I also think selling points for Glossier U, because I used to rock Glossier U fucking hard for years, is that it lasted for days.
Different types of musk, like, you're gonna have that super crazy longevity.
Glossier U is mostly ambroxan. Notes of iris, pink pepper, ambroxan, and ambrette.
There definitely is pink pepper, for sure.
Part of the reason why they launched Glossier U before their pop-up retail locations is that they use it to have the store smell like the fragrance.
Smart.
So after this $1 billion valuation, the pandemic happens. So Glossier has to close all of its retail pop-ups. Also during the pandemic, there's a bit of a switch in the cultural zeitgeist from millennial pink, which Glossier has cemented its branding in, to the Gen Z aesthetics, which are very different. Whereas Glossier made its whole brand on, I woke up like this. Glossier starts to struggle during the pandemic in terms of making sales. Also, out of the gloss launches.
We're into the gloss. No, we're out of the gloss.
It's all former employees, mainly of their retail locations, who are talking about what it was like working for Glossier.
The tea. Tell me everything.
Yes. One report was a person of color employee refused to let a customer touch their hair and then was reprimanded by their boss. Now, when you place this in context of we're not paying you full amounts and we're also using you to get out of advertising and having to hire a model, it makes things really, really sketchy. One book that I read did say that there was girl boss backlash and that there were a lot of CEOs, particularly of direct-to-consumer companies, they were being outed for having a bunch of violations for HR. The thing that makes Emily's a little bit different is that a lot of it is racial.
Is it now?
That is interesting. With Out of the Gloss, something that keeps getting reported is that there's people of color at lower rungs of the company, and the higher up in the company you go, the less and less there are.
Imagine that. The whiter it gets, the higher the pay. Crazy.
Surprise. from
Surprise,
a company that
surprise.
only launched their foundation with 3 shades. The argument of like, oh, well, this was the girl boss takedown has merit if she didn't actually do some shady stuff. But there's actually shady stuff that happened. And there's a history of shady stuff that happened. So was Out of the Glass kind of taking a moment of taking down girl bosses, or were they just voicing something that was actually happening? In 2022, Glossier is being sold at TJ Maxx.
Is it really?
Yep.
Okay, work, mama.
We go from $1 billion valuation in 2019 to 3 years later being sold at TJ Maxx.
Maxinista.
My favorite tweet is, I too am Glossier makeup at TJ Maxx, hot and full of potential in 2017, not quite where I want to be in 2022. It's such a mood. Oh my God.
That is the tweet.
Oh, in May of 2022, Emily Weiss steps down as CEO. She's still on the board, but she's not in the C-suite. So, question for you. Do you think you could give up Venus Invictus?
Hell no. No, absolutely not.
This is basically her only job, right?
Right.
She had W, and then she did Into the Gloss, which morphed into Glossier. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could give up Sif Sniffs.
How much money are we talking about? I'd have to get paid a lot of money to give up my brand.
So after she steps down in 2022, a post goes viral, and Glossier U starts selling like crazy.
Okay.
And then it sells 1 million units in 2022, which equates to a bottle once every 43 seconds.
Should you not? I can look at someone and know that they wear Glossier U.
Wait, do I look like a person who wore Glossier U for years?
No.
Well, I went from
You don't.
Glossier U to Juliet Has a Gun, Not a Perfume, which I think is a better version of the Not a Perfume perfume. So in 2023, with the new CEO, Glossier abandons direct-to-consumer and launches at Sephora. But one of the things that Emily pushes for is that U is not in the fragrance area of Sephora. It's with their makeup in their stacks.
Huh. Oh, interesting. What an episode, Glossier.
Glossier, with it, started out with lip balm. What were you doing in high school? I was just, working for my public library.
I was smoking weed in cut a class.